Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Remi. Thanks for tuning in on my channel. I discuss on faith, lifestyle, and development. So if you're interested in any of those things, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. So it's free to subscribe. Just click on the red button that says subscribe and that's it. So for this video, I'm going to be paying a tribute to a loved one, and that loved one is my grandfather. Today is May 23rd, 2020, and today is a special day because today marks 20 years since my granddad passed away. So I remember this day vividly. 20 years ago, I came back from school. I was 10 years old at the time. I came back from school and I learned that my granddad had just passed away, which was obviously sad because the day before I knew he was sick, and apparently he was responding to treatments the day before, and then the next day when I came back from school I learned and I heard that he passed away. So today is 20 years after the fact, and I'm just going to be making this video as a tribute, paying a tribute to my grandfather. Growing up in Nigeria, I lived with my grandparents. I loved them even to date, and I figured, and I've always wanted to do a video for my granddad. I've talked about him in a couple of my past videos, and what better time to do this video than today. So this video is just basically going to be talking about the experience I had with my granddad, the memories that I have of him, the values, the life lessons that I learned from him, and things like that. So I hope that you stay tuned to watch this video. Okay, so my granddad, his name was John Dada Ajayi, aka John D. Ajayi, or John Ajayi. That was his full name, and he was born on July 8th, 1928. He was born in Ikole City in Ipao, Ekiti. But yeah, it was from Ikole City in Ekiti. That was where he was from. And initially he was born into a Muslim family, and then he converted into Christianity. And he went to a Baptist school. At some point he had a photography studio in Nigeria, and then later in his life he traveled to the UK to go get an education, and when he came back he started his business. So prior to that he was working for companies. He was doing photography work for companies and things like that, and he got to a point where he said he didn't want to work for anyone and that he wanted to start his own business. So he went to the UK, he traveled to the UK, he lived and worked and schooled in the UK for about 7 years, and then came back to Nigeria to start his business. And he started his printing business, making plastic nylons and paper bags and Ziploc type materials, and even bread paper at the time. So I remember what his office and his equipment looked like at the time. So he used to make a lot of plastics for companies. So when you go to, for example, when you go to Walmart and you're trying to buy something at the store, there's bags there. So he used to make bags like that, and even Ziploc bags, and actually bread paper as well. So if you're Nigerian and you know how bread is very popular on the streets and things like that, and people that make bread, so the paper for that, the bag for that, he had machines that made stuff like that. So he made it in bulk. He ran a very successful, very successful business. He poured into it, he invested his money into it, he invested his time into it. So he had a whole infrastructure. He was the CEO and he was paying many employees. So he ran a very successful business. My granddad, is an embodiment. He was an embodiment of hard work, of dedication, of discipline, of drive. He was driven, and whatever he set his mind to, he always accomplished, and he accomplished very well. So I learned so much from him. He was truly a force to be reckoned with. Now, to a little bit of, giving you some background about who he is, his name, where he was born, where he grew up, and things like that, and some of the things that he did for work. Now to his lifestyle, he was not necessarily born into a wealthy family. So when he was born, his parents were not educated, they didn't have money, and he was, pretty much born into poverty. But what stands out about my granddad was that he didn't let that dictate how his life was going to be. As I mentioned earlier, he was dedicated, he was hardworking. So my granddad sponsored himself to school. He even helped to sponsor his siblings and other people to school as well. So basically my granddad was, at some point he was selling newspaper just to be able to send himself to school. He was doing like odd jobs just so he can send himself to school. He believed so much in education. He was an advocate of education because he believed that, once you educate yourself, you open a world of treasure. And he was really an advocate of education. He knew education was important. His parents couldn't afford it, so he did what he had to do, in a legitimate manner to send himself to school. And that is something to be very respectful of. So as I mentioned earlier, he grew up in Ekiti, but he later on went to Lagos for school before he then went to the UK to further his education. Also, I was very deliberate about this because I really want to get some points across, as I talk about my granddad, his values, the lessons I learned from him, what he stood for, his nature and things like that. My granddad was a very kind-hearted and generous human being. A very kind-hearted and generous human being. So as I mentioned that today is the remembrance, the 20 years remembrance of his passing, since he passed in, year 2000, May 23rd, year 2000. He was known for his kind-heartedness. Like, he was very kind-hearted, he was very compassionate, he was loving, he was very generous. That's who my granddad was. That's who I saw, growing up, and I said to myself, you know what, this is an example. This is a good example of what, a human being should be doing. So, I'm going to put up a flyer because my uncle came up with a great, he took a great initiative to, for us to all, for the family members, for friends, who knew grandpa, to remember grandpa in a great way 20 years later. So my uncle, took the initiative, and there's a flyer that I'm going to show on this page that, talks about what my grandfather was, a snippet of what my grandfather was, what he stood for, and things like that. And, this flyer was to be, shared in Nigeria in, one of the, I think it's the second most read newspapers in Nigeria, the Nation newspaper and the Tribune newspaper as well. So that's already in the papers in Nigeria, and people are seeing that. And also, we the family were sharing in our churches and mentioning our grandpa and remembering him on this day. On the flyer, it says that, my granddad, put himself at a great, inconvenience to satisfy the need of family, of friends, of others. But that's who my granddad was. He was very kind. He was very generous. Such a kind man, such a kind man. He was determined to help people. So whether he knew you or whether he didn't know you, he was determined to help people. He used to go out of his way to find ways to help people. My granddad was such an inspiration, is still an inspiration to me. My biggest inspiration, my hero. That's who my granddad was. He was just known for investing in people. He loved to invest in people. He loved to help people. He loved to extend a hand to people. So whoever needs help, he was there. Very selfless human being. Also, my granddad was very accommodating. It does not matter where you're coming from, who you are. He was very accommodating. For example, there was a time, when I was much younger, when, my granddad accommodated someone into a section of our, because we had a big house when I was growing up in Nigeria, and he, let somebody stay in one of the sections of the house for free, rent free. And this person was working, this person had a job, but he just decided to just be kind and help that person. And the person was living with us rent free. This was not a family member, this was a total stranger. But again, that shows who my granddad was. The person lived there for free for years, got married, and then eventually got their own house, and then they moved on. But my granddad believed in investing in people and helping people. That's who he was. Now to his personality. My granddad was a vibe. He was a whole vibe. Like, anyone who knew him knew that he loved the good life. He loved to enjoy himself. I think I got that from him. He loved to enjoy himself. Good food. He loved to travel. I mean, he came to the US many times for vacation. He also liked to make people feel comfortable. So whenever anyone came to our house then and they were new to our house, we give them a tour, make them that they're well fed, very, very, very hospitable, and very accommodating. And he just loved the good life. That's who my granddad was. I think I fell in love with Mercedes-Benz just by watching my grandpa. He used to cruise in his Benz. He used to visit his city in Ekiti, so Ikole city, with his Benz. And I was like, I like this. So he loved the good life. He was a whole vibe. And like I said earlier on, he loved to make people feel comfortable. So many people that we were not even related to can attest to how good of a man my granddad was, how he was very loving, very, accommodating. He would engage you in a conversation. No matter how young you think you were or you are, like, he would engage you in a conversation. He'll make you feel important. He'll answer your questions. He will tend to you. That's who my granddad was. Also, my granddad was very honest. No shady anything going on. He believed in clean money. Like I said, he grew up poor, so he worked hard. To get to where he was able to get to in his lifetime, and he made impact. He made impact all over the world. He made impact. He was very honest, and he was very devoted to his family, devoted to my grandma. Their relationship was beautiful to watch. Their marriage relationship, the relationship between my granddad and my grandma, was beautiful to watch. My grandma is still very much alive. She's healthy. I'm thankful for her. I love her with all my heart. And their relationship was beautiful to watch. It was quite an example. It was quite an example, a good example to have and to see. He was very hardworking, like I said. So, the legacy that my granddad leaves on is definitely one to keep. It's one to pass on to generations. It's an inspiration. Literally, it's an inspiration. And the fact that my granddad was all of these things, an embodiment of grace, love, kindness, hard work, dedication, diligence. It was just, it's something to think about. It's something to always remember. Today is the day of remembrance, but there's no day that I don't think of my granddad. I miss him so much. I loved him dearly. He was my favorite human being. He truly was. And, I'm just glad that we're all, the family, we're here, we're doing well. A lot of what I've been able to accomplish today, it was because I saw my granddad, growing up, and how he put his mind to whatever he wanted to do, and he accomplished it, and he was very successful at it. And that's who my granddad was. So I just wanted to share this video and make it as a tribute to, paying a tribute to my granddad. And I hope you enjoyed watching this. So I have a special feature for this video. I'm going to call my grandma on WhatsApp, because my grandma has WhatsApp, and I can, video call her. So I'm going to call her really quickly, and I'm going to have her say something about grandpa. So hold on a minute. Hi, Grandma. Hi, Grandma.
Hi, Remi. Hi, granddaughter.
So, mon share YouTube video, me lower. So I'm doing my YouTube video now. So I said I was going to call you so that you can quickly tell us something, about anything about Grandpa, and as we're remembering him today, 20 years later.
Now, do you want it now?
Yes.
Do you want me to speak about him now, my one and only husband?
Yes, your one and only husband.
For 44 years that I married him. And never do I regret marrying him. He was such a very, very loving, caring, very, very hardworking. Very, very hardworking. And he loves people, to help. He can go at any length, in order to solve other people's problems.
Yeah.
That is his desire. Anytime he wakes up, he goes around. If you have any problem, he will go at length to make sure that he tries if he could solve it.
Yeah.
And then if he could not solve it, he will just know that he has tried his best.
Yeah.
And that is him.
Yes. So it's part of what I was saying earlier on, that Grandpa was very selfless, very generous, very kind, and very hardworking. Yes. So how are you feeling today, Grandma? How are you feeling today?
I'm fine.
That's
I'm
good.
Really fine.
That's good.
Remembering him.
That's good.
And I'm happy. I am just remembering him. I'm not weeping.
Yes.
I'm not sorrowful.
Yes, it's a celebration.
I'm remembering him in joy, in happiness.
Yes.
In being grateful to God.
Yes.
For the past 30 years he had gone.
Yes.
I have never been in need of anything.
Yes.
God is always there.
Yep.
For everyone that he left.
Yes.
Everyone is progressing.
Correct. Yep.
The grandchildren are progressing. The other children too are progressing. And I thank God for that.
Yes. We bless God.
That means
yes. Yeah.
Continue.
In the name of Jesus.
So
Amen.
it will be better than this even next year.
Amen. Amen.
We will just be increasing and we will not be decreasing.
Amen. Thank you.
So that is my one and only husband.
One and only husband. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you.
One and only husband. Because that is what he used to call me. Anytime he goes about coming back from work, when he gets home, oh, Daddy, be my wife. How are you? I'm fine, So
that's awesome.
My children, they don't know him. They just know him to be Daddy, be my wife.
Oh my gosh.
Who do I mention name? That is Remi, ajilore.
All right, Grandma. I'll call you after the video. I'll call you back after the video. But I wanted to feature you in, and I'm glad I was able to capture this. But I'll call you after this video again. Okay, I think I got cut off. Okay, so guys, that was my grandma on the phone. I called her on WhatsApp, and she just told us some things about Grandpa, from her perspective. And like she said, our one and only husband, he was loving, he was caring, and I just, my granddad, yeah, he was the best guy. He was literally the best guy. My memories of him was, this sharp guy, always dressed nicely, for work, very serious, very hardworking, and also very respectful, regardless of who you were. I remember, growing up, we had maids at home in Nigeria, he treated everyone with respect, regardless of your status. He treated you with respect. He acknowledged you. Even our maids, he sent, to school to take evening classes because he believed in investing in people. So, his legacy lives on. His legacy lives on. And, there's a lot of things to be learned and to continue learning from my grandpa. But that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel on your way out, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.